Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a question that's been stirring up a lot of discussion lately. Are landlords really necessary? For decades, the traditional landlord-tenant model has dominated the rental market. But with rising rents, housing shortages, and the growing desire for more autonomy, people are starting to question whether this system still makes sense or if it ever did in the first place. In this video, we're going to explore that question from all angles and look at some innovative alternatives to traditional renting that are gaining traction around the world. So let's start with the basics. The typical landlord model involves a property owner who rents out their space to tenants, collecting rent in exchange for providing housing and, ideally, maintaining the property. While this system can work well for both parties in theory, in practice, it doesn't always play out that way. Critics argue that landlords often profit off of limited housing supply without adding real value, especially in markets where tenants have few options. On the flip side, landlords will argue that they take on significant risk, manage maintenance, and provide housing options where governments and larger developers fall short. But are there better ways to structure our housing system? One alternative that's been gaining momentum is housing cooperatives. In a co-op, residents collectively own and manage the property, often making decisions democratically. This model can foster a strong sense of community, keep housing costs stable, and eliminate the landlord role altogether. Another rising option is community land trusts, where a nonprofit organization owns the land and leases it to residents, ensuring long-term affordability and preventing speculative real estate practices. Both models prioritize resident control over profit, which is a big shift from the traditional rental dynamic. Then there's rent-to-own models, shared equity programs, and even build-to-rent communities that operate more like horizontal apartments, giving renters some of the perks of home ownership without the upfront cost. On the tech side, platforms built around blockchain and decentralized ownership are proposing radical new ways to structure property rights and rental agreements, which could further reduce the need for a traditional landlord figure. Even short-term housing exchanges and co-living spaces are challenging the norms of how we think about renting and property. But it's important to acknowledge that these alternatives aren't perfect or even viable everywhere. Co-ops require a high level of coordination and community engagement, and not everyone wants to be involved in managing their own building. Land trusts can be limited by funding and local zoning laws. And many of the tech-driven solutions are still in early stages or only accessible to certain groups. Plus, in many areas, landlords, especially small local ones, are still playing an important role in providing housing that governments and institutions aren't stepping up to build. So, are landlords really necessary? The answer might depend on your perspective, your location, and your values. But what's clear is that people are reimagining what housing can look like, moving away from the idea that renting always has to mean giving up control to a landlord. These emerging models show us that there are other ways to live, and they're pushing the conversation forward toward more equitable, community-focused solutions. Whether you're a tenant, a landlord, or just someone interested in the future of housing, it's worth paying attention to where this movement is heading. Thanks for watching. If you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Do you think landlords are still necessary, or is it time for a new system? Let's talk about it. See you in the next one.